Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're going to give it a couple minutes for people to join and file in. Please feel free to utilize the chat and say hi to everyone and let us know where you're joining from. All right, everyone. Thank you again for joining us today. My name is Connie Jang. I'm the marketing specialist here at Aporto. First, I just want to go over a few housekeeping rules. We do have the webinar recorded. Also, please feel free to use the chat as well as the Q&A. We'll love for this to be a really interactive webinar. I know we have some really good information from the panelists here today. So feel free to ask any questions, any comments, and it will be monitored. So without further ado, Anthony, I'll hand it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all for joining today. We have attendees all the way from Europe. We have even panelists who are all the way from Europe, all the way to obviously North America, but also to Australia. So I want to thank you all for joining. And without much further ado, I'm Anthony. I'm the CEO and founder of Aporto, but you're not here to listen to me. You're here to listen to our great panel, and I'm going to let them introduce themselves. Jeff, if you could introduce yourself, please.
Sure, thank you. My name is Jeff Krischel. I'm senior manager here at DeVry University. I lead the team of 4 solutions managers who take care of the entire tech portfolio that we put in front of students. So anything that a student touches as far as technology goes, we and my team manage that. So
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff. And perhaps Philip, if you
Hello,
can tell us.
hello everyone. My name's Phil Barton, and I'm a solution manager for DeVry University of Academic Learning Technologies. I report into Jeff. Been with DeVry for 25 years, and I'm in charge of the student experience. So, as Jeff mentioned, any learning technologies that students touch as part of their educational journey, we are in charge of that. So, it's great to be here, Anthony.
Good to have you. Fawad, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hey everyone. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining from. It's afternoon for me. I'm right now in Paris. So I spent 2 decades at Microsoft. I'm the former head of Azure Lab Services, and I'm also an adjunct faculty member at University of Washington here in Seattle. Happy to be here and adding my point of view.
Thank you, Fawad. Thank you, Fawad. So let's dive right into it. You guys mentioned the word that piqued my interest and attention, Jeff and Philip. You talked about student experience. In a previous conversation. You mentioned friction. Tell us a little bit about why do you guys concern yourself with the student experience? Why is eliminating friction very important to you? Perhaps we can start with Jeff.
sure. So one of the things that we measure from a KPI perspective is the student friction, as you mentioned, which we measure as student tickets to our service desk analysts and the time it takes to resolve those issues. And so what we found through investigations and some data analytics is that students who do open up tickets, especially the first week or two of the session, our sessions they're only 8 weeks, and so it's very condensed. And so what we found is that students who do open tickets in those first couple of weeks are less likely to persist. Student success it drops significantly during those first 2 weeks. And so it's very important for us to make sure that students get in to technology without any kind of barriers or roadblocks, and ultimately that drives student outcomes. So
Yeah. So I think that's a very key learning that we have internalized as well. that any amount of student friction will discourage students, particularly in the first couple of weeks of the semester where they say, perhaps this is not for me. I'm going to drop off from this course and maybe change their journey. So we're 100% with you. So where do you think does a virtual computer lab fit in that paradigm of, removing friction? Maybe Philip, you can cover this topic.
Yeah, I would say, Anthony, great question. Virtual computer lab needs to be able to, it needs to have the right tools for students to access as a learning tool for even faculty as well. But you want to make sure that you have the right set of tools in front of the students in the courses that you offer, right? And as part of that tool or technology that you integrate, it needs to be easily accessible. When you think about a traditional college, a student walks into the campus, they open the door, they sit down at the computer, they log in, and they expect to have the software right there. In a virtual computer lab, you have a couple of clicks that you need to get to from point A to point B, from the course to launching the actual technology or software. The more clicks that the student has to take, the more things they have to type, you're preventing them from getting into that virtual lab experience. So
yeah, agree. Particularly in your case, if I understand correctly, you had two virtual computer labs. One was on-prem and the other was in the cloud. Perhaps, Jeff, if you could tell us more about what you had in place.
Yeah, sure. So we utilized a Citrix environment for a lot of the application delivery, virtual app delivery. And that was hosted through our data center, which we had a team of folks who managed that, kept it updated from patches and security updates and vulnerability remediation, et cetera. And then we also utilized the Azure Lab Services cloud solution, which was more desktop, availability or giving students the ability to have an entire desktop. Citrix we used primarily just for the virtual app delivery, so individual apps on a per launch basis.
Very cool. Perhaps we can jump on our first poll, Connie. If you could put the first poll on the screen and we can take a look. So the question is, what is your current setup? Will you have an on-prem virtual computer lab looking to stay on-prem? You have an on-prem virtual computer lab looking to move to the cloud. You have Azure Lab Services, and obviously, since Azure Lab Services, as we're going to discuss, is being end of life, you're looking to move, or you have physical computer labs.
All right, I'm going to give it a couple more seconds and then we can share the results. Okay.
Okay, 0% on-prem looking to stay on-prem. 38% on-prem looking to the cloud. 50% ALS looking to move, and 13% physical computer labs. Well, that's surprising to me. Fawad, what's your reaction to this?
Yeah, well, actually, I expected that more people would say that we want to move off of Azure Lab Services to a different solution, because we have, or when it was announced last year, it was around April timeframe that Microsoft said that they were going to have users or give choice to customers to move to different solutions. So not surprised on that being a higher number and more people looking to move to a solution as a replacement for Azure Lab Services.
Excellent. Thank you. All right. So you guys had Citrix, you had Azure Lab Services in place. So what were the drivers for you folks starting to look for a new solution? And Philip, since I think you were kind of the lead, perhaps, in my understanding, perhaps you can tell us, what drove you to look beyond the existing solutions that you had in place?
Yeah, great, Anthony. The big one was the overhead that was involved in working and managing with Azure Lab Services. I mean, the Microsoft folks were great and they supported us, but every 8 weeks, and as Jeff mentioned, we had short 8 week sessions. There was a great amount of work that was required from requesting capacity on the Azure Lab resources in order to spin up. To give you some context here, we had 25 courses that used Azure Labs. So significant chunk, right? Over 4,000 VMs were provisioned every session. So we had to request the capacity with Azure. So that takes time, right? Pulling the roster list, the volume, sending the emails, involving Microsoft. Our faculty were involved, updating the images. It was quite a manual effort just to make that run, just to get us into a place where students could access. And then the other piece was the sending of the emails, the sending of the emails and the invites to students. We did not have any integration with Canvas. So all of that was a main driver because on the back end, we saw the student friction. We saw the tickets, increased volume of tickets every session because there was no integration. Students needed the remote desktop app. Students that had Chromebooks were out of luck, right? There are workarounds. Yes, there are certain websites that you can work around, but there were many different points where we struggled and students struggled as a result of that. I think those were the key drivers.
I hear you. Jeff, you mentioned to me some very interesting statistics about support tickets, etc. Perhaps you could share it with the audience.
Yeah, I mean, when we migrated just from the Citrix environment, I'll go there. Again, as Phil mentioned, client, Citrix receiver, getting students who may have a different device than just your standard Windows. Those tickets, we saw a lot of those in the Azure Lab Services. Again, the invitation emails and getting in, having the remote desktop application, et cetera. So as we transitioned, and I'll ask Phil for the exact numbers, but we saw significant. I mean, significance probably not even a strong enough word, but the reduction of friction was overall from the entire portfolio that we had in a virtual environment was upwards of 60 and some change percent reduction in student tickets. I think Phil, help me out. One of the colleges that we implemented this in were somewhere upwards of 90% student friction reduction. Is that?
Yes, College of Health Sciences used a specific application, and that was problematic for them. And when we moved them over to a Porto from Citrix, it was 90% reduction in student tickets for that group. It was amazing. Yeah.
Those numbers are truly amazing. And thank you, folks, for sharing those numbers. I'm sure the audience is somewhat in disbelief, but thank you guys for sharing this. What about there is another aspect to a service like this, obviously, reducing the tickets, but to me, there are two other very important considerations. One is the amount of resources needed to maintain, virtual computer labs. And after, following that is, what about uptime? What about things like uptime? But let's talk first perhaps about the resourcing required. Jeff, since you're the manager, perhaps you can talk to us about the resourcing.
Yeah, so I think as I mentioned, when we had our on-premises Citrix environment managed through our data center, we, as I mentioned, had a team of folks that would maintain the infrastructure, maintain the software, maintain the VMs on the background, all the stuff behind the curtain. And as we transitioned, it's really Phil who's liaison with the Aporto folks to make sure all that gets done. So we removed teams of folks from our side, from the DeVry side, and that's been huge. it frees them up to do other things and really gives us one point of contact through the Aporto platform. So it's been great for us.
Yeah, there were two significant lifts, I would say, if we had to capture it, right, in terms of how we're looking at how we moved. We moved from Citrix to Aporto using their virtual lab technology. That was one. And then we also moved from Azure Lab Services, our 25 courses. Some of those courses moved to Aporto. But one of the key things is that we had to take a close look at each one of those courses and work with our academic partners, our deans, to truly understand what was being used. Because all of you that are familiar with Azure Lab Services, we took a hard look at all of the labs that we spin up every session, and we noticed like anywhere between 30 and 35% of those Azure labs that we spun up were getting used. The other 65 to 70% were going unused. Students either didn't need to use them, and it was only for like it was optional. So just imagine all the time that we spend spinning up those resources, and then we find out that 35% was being used. So we were able to take a harder look and prune some of the software and understand truly what solution we needed, right? And then again, Aporto has their persistent solution that also Microsoft acknowledged and promoted during that process. So we took advantage of that in several of the courses that had a really good fit. So just to give you some context on the move from Azure Lab Services.
Excellent.
It help.
And as a follow-up to that, what is your experience with uptime? I mean, obviously, uptime is a very important consideration. Even though students' time is free to a university, they don't have to pay the students. But obviously, anytime there's an outage, it impacts, the courses, particularly in your case that the course, spans only 8 weeks. Can you talk about uptime, perhaps?
Yeah, I'll take a swing at this. One of the unique things about our learners is, and we've tracked this. Our learners are working adults. They don't all sit at a computer and do their work at noon every day. So sometimes we'll see folks doing their assignments and lab work at 2 a.m. And so it's very important for us to make sure, number one, the system is up, 24 hours a day, and then also if there is an issue, we need to make sure that we have folks available to address those issues, troubleshoot resolutions, et cetera. I think the other piece too is system maintenance and things like that. From an Azure Lab Services perspective, I think there were several times where system-wide maintenance was conducted, and we're kind of again Sundays are our largest student. They're submitting their work, trying to get it done there on the last day of the week. And so sometimes we would have system maintenance events where we can't control them, and I think Aporto has been a great partner with us on being able to schedule those types of things when they come up and asking for, hey, can we push this back, for a time that's a little bit less utilized by our students.
Very interesting. So perhaps this is a good segue, Connie, into the second poll. If you could post the second poll on the screen, please. So the second poll is, besides technical capabilities, what is your biggest priority, when evaluating a replacement for your existing solution? Ease of use, cost effectiveness, security and compliance, integration with existing campus infrastructure, vendor support, and responsiveness. We'll give it here a few seconds. Connie, let us know when you have enough of a quorum.
Okay, I'll be sharing the results right now.
Thank you, Connie. So that's really interesting. 50% say ease of use for faculty and students, and another 50% say cost effectiveness. 0% are concerned with security and compliance. I guess that's a given.
Anthony,
0%. Go ahead.
I think we were looking for all of the above. There might have been a few that wanted all of
Ah,
the above.
no, that's a good point, Philip. I think we should run those polls by you guys before we post them here. Yeah, Ed says all of the above for sure. That makes sense. Um, Fawad, what is your reaction to this ease of use? And I mean, you guys obviously being Microsoft on the cost part, I think you could offer great deals to customers, and you could offer them things like free storage. Um, Give us perhaps your thoughts on that.
Let me put my product manager hat on. So the first question around ease of use, that is really key. Ease of use for educators to set up the service, and then ease of use for students to start the virtual machine with one click. To make sure that, as Philip was saying, they can get into the environment, get going, and they don't have to worry about anything. So that's key. That's definitely to make sure that educators are successful and students are successful. On the cost, it's a great question. First of all, yes, the way the business model is set up right now, and this is no secret that the customers of Azure Lab Services are not paying for storage at all. And the costs are going to go up for every customer who is going to continue to use these VDI solutions for the educational departments and schools that want to use it. So that's one big change that every customer is going to see is the cost. But I definitely don't. I'm not surprised with the first question that user experience is key for everyone to be successful.
I think I was a bit surprised that the integration, for instance, with the LMS was not mentioned as an important consideration. And perhaps because the people, the attendees do not know what that entails. But I think perhaps Jeff or Philip, you mentioned the integration with the LMS. Tell us what are some of the benefits you've been able to see out of the integration with the LMS, Philip.
Yeah, I could take that one. So I think that the first one is the speed. We noticed an improvement for a speed to launch an application from first click within our Canvas learning management system, 35 seconds for a student to get into an application. So that for comparison, it's 50% reduction in what our students noticed before. So we reduce the amount of time it takes for a student to click in and begin using it from when they first click their mouse, right? And our faculty did not believe us initially. Like, we had captured videos of how easy it was to get into an Oporto virtual desktop, and it was night and day difference, right? And as soon as we started promoting that, was like a selling point, and we were able to get our academic folks and our teams on board with the solution. And that was the important piece, I think, for Jeff and I and our team, is in order to make this work, we had to partner with our curriculum team, our academic team, right? So they could see truly what this experience was going to look like.
And I would add to that too. The When we're able to integrate within our LMS, that really takes the guesswork out from as I mentioned, our main focus of my team is student experience and that culture of care. And for a student to be able just to be in their course, they go to their module and they click the link to go to their virtual lab environment, that's huge for them, right? They don't have to go dig through their emails and find a URL and click on that and remember a username and password. Like, the seamless integration from the Canvas LMS is huge for us.
What about the provisioning and deprovisioning? How did you do that, with Citrix and or with ALS versus how you do it with Oporto, Philip?
Yeah, with Citrix, Jeff, you may have to jump in on that one, because there was a certain time frame, right, where accounts were Uh,
Yeah. So just it seems like so long ago, but we originally had created groups, security groups where we would place students in based on their enrollments. And so if a course was using a particular software title, they would be provisioned based on the group that they were in. Again, that a lot of that was manual overhead in the back on the back end, where teams of folks would have to go and look at rosters and look at courses in our SIS and understand the technology relationship to see what they needed. That was, we moved from that model to because of the resource constraints, we went to okay, it's no different than sitting down at a computer lab where all the software is loaded on the computer. So we opened it up and said, if you're a student, you get these titles, and so you could, from the app window, you could, select whichever ones you want. Moving that to an Aporto platform where students would be, and Phil, you can help me. You were bigger part on the integration piece, but moving from that to where we are today, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, it's fully automated. So student gets provisioned when they click in from their LMS, right? So they start using it, account gets created. If they if they stop using it for 12 months, I believe their account is tagged or marked, and it's disabled. The account and data still live with that student. And after I think another 30 days passes and they still don't use it, the account is then purged and deleted. But also, what's nice about that process, well, so it's fully automated. But if the student comes back and re-enrolls in the university and clicks the link to get back in, well, they get a new account. So no tickets, there's no fuss, right? It's frictionless and simple. Simple is the key word here.
Very much so. Very much so. So can you quantify perhaps, Jeff? Um, I mean, I think the cost consideration was the number two consideration on the list. And as Fawad, mentioned, obviously people are going to have to be looking at some cost increases, at least in the infrastructure, because Microsoft, was not charging for storage, but Microsoft does start charge for storage. Microsoft charges us for storage. They charge all of their other customers for storage. I think they made that as an exception when they introduced Azure Lab Services. So tell us a little bit, about the savings, quantitatively that you've been able to achieve by reducing the footprint of all the people who had to kind of babysit this environment versus now.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, as I mentioned, that the team of folks, soft cost of just resource time, Phil's time, infrastructure team. I mean, all of that, if we bundle it together, is, still a cost savings, from, after transitioning to the Aporto platform. Um, the Azure Lab Services piece it wasn't expensive, but again there was all that overhead, right? And by shifting that, to a slightly more costly upfront cost, but if you look at bottom line, which I do from a budgeting perspective, we're still in cost savings mode just from resource capacity and the ability to now go and do other things. So
Excellent. Very cool. Very, very cool. Um, so, in the Department of Lessons Learned, for those people who may be looking or thinking of migrating from Azure Lab Services or Citrix to Aporto, what would be some of the lessons you've learned, Philip, that you can share with the audience?
Yeah, I would say this, that the first off, we knew that we had some time. If we really wanted to, we could have stayed on Azure Lab for a while, right? I think they're retiring their services in June of 2027. But with every session that passed, we knew that the teams that were supporting Azure Labs, there's they're looking to retire it. So there's a risk, right? We have a risk that something could change. The platform could change and there could be an outage. So that was a risk for us. Considering the amount of friction that we saw with tickets, we knew we wanted to move fast. And that was actually one of the reasons why we jumped on the opportunity to to partner with Porto is because they had several solutions for us. And we had already discussed the amount of friction that students had with Azure Labs, and we wanted to get ourselves in a better place. So we moved quickly so that we weren't waiting and potentially putting, more students at risk, right, or having that negative experience. So that was one area there.
If I understand correctly, you had started looking for a new solution even before ALS announced its end of life. Am I correct?
Yes, we were actively looking for a replacement from Citrix as well at the same time. And I think that's when Jeff and I scoped out several vendors and we came across your website, Anthony, and it was much to my delight, the ability to sign up and jump into a demo right there. And it was so easy, right? So that caught my eye. And I think the ease of use, speaks volumes when you're seeing a demo, because it truly means that there's some nice integration, reliability, and just to be able to get in quickly, right? So,
Yeah.
And I think
In fact, go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, I was going to say, I was going to add to that too. I mean, timeline wise, just for folks on the webinar, that we had migrated or shifted everything from our Citrix environment already, and then it was so successful that we started looking at, since we're looking at replacements for Azure Lab Services, would this work? And so having conversations, and then it just so happened that the announcement of the retirement of Azure Labs happened, shortly after that. It was perfect timing that we just kind of jumped in and said, well, let's see if this will work for us, and it did. So
yeah, and some of our courses that were in Azure Labs before, we were able to move them over to the Porto virtual desktop experience, the virtual lab, right? There were some courses that required databases and unique setups where, and Anthony and your team, you might be able to speak to this a little bit more, but we needed that persistent desktop so that we can put students all into kind of like a closed VM, and they can do their work, and we don't have to worry about provisioning database accounts or changing passwords on that. And that was one of the key things for the persistent solution. So when we moved those courses over to the persistent solution, Porto was there, and their team was great in helping us take those images that we're all using them today, right? Some of you that are in Azure Labs, take those Azure Lab images, and we were able to easily migrate those into Porto, and they were able to ingest them. And it wasn't that difficult. A little bit of planning up front, making sure you have an inventory of all of your Azure Lab images that you actively use. And Porto's team worked with Microsoft to take those out, capture the image, and ingest them into Porto system. So that went fairly smooth. We didn't really run into any issues there. So for those of you that are thinking about it, it was a painless process.
How long did it take for that process, from beginning to end, if you just look at Azure Lab Services?
Oh, for spinning up a lab in Azure Lab?
Yeah. Yeah. Sorry. What I mean, the migration from Azure Lab Services to Porto, how long did that take you, do you think?
Ooh, I would say it was about 8 to 10 months, because we started the planning right at the announcement, like last April. And I remember meeting with Jeff, and we're like, we're going to get this thing out of here by July, hands down. And we did. We have one final course that we're moving out of there, but that's it. We're done. We're pretty much out of Azure Labs. So let's say a full year.
Yeah, but I mean, it didn't take a full year to deploy the first course. It took some amount of time to deploy the first course, then another amount of time to deploy the second, etc. Is that a fair statement?
That's fair, because we have to work with our academic partners, right? They have to redevelop the course and make sure that they're putting in the right so that takes time, right? But the actual migration, didn't take that long.
Fawad, what are, if you were back in your Microsoft shoes, and you're not, sorry, what kind of the recommendations would be? What would be your recommendations for those people looking to migrate away from ALS to some other solution?
Right. I think the announcement has been there for more than a year. My recommendation would be number one, don't wait. Start the planning process now. It does take time, especially for larger universities and colleges, or if you were hosting a lot of courses through Azure Lab Services, to start planning now and start with a proof of concept, just like DeVry did, a proof of concept to see that you can run the classes. The third thing, which Phillip was touching on, was the images. That's a big key technical consideration, to make sure that images that you are using in Azure Lab Services or Citrix or whatever environment you have, they can seamlessly move over into a portal, and they are available for you to use, because that does save you a lot of time. And your IT department and your educators who are using those images, they don't need to build them again. They're readily available. Sure, it's a different environment, but creating an image and maintaining it, like 70% of job on using a VDI system. So it's important that you take that as a key consideration and move forward very quickly with a pilot. June,
Right.
yeah, June 2027 would be here before you know it, and you can't wait till May or something like that to say that I'm going to move over in June
If I
2027.
if I remember correctly, you guys had two deadlines, one for the first release of ALS, or I don't know what you call it, and then an extended deadline for the second release. Am I correct?
Well, we wanted customers to move off of, and this is also in the retirement guide. If you go to Azure Lab Services retirement guide, we preferred customers to get off of V1 as quickly as possible. I don't know the plans, and I don't know any concrete date, but we were highly recommending customers that if you were based on the V1 version of the service where you were using lab accounts, you should move much faster. Either go with a partner solution like a Porto, or just go move to V2 as an interim solution, and then
Mm.
you can jump. But again, my recommendation is, please do not wait and start now. Start the planning process if you haven't started, and start doing a proof of concept as soon as possible.
Excellent.
Anthony and Fawad, I was curious. I don't want to go off script here, but would it be safe to maybe take a quick poll in chat, like about what everyone's concerns are with the current state and what they're looking at in the future, just to kind of get a pulse of, or
Sure. Yeah, why not? We don't, can we organize a quick poll, or should we have it ad hoc in the chat, Mike and Connie?
I could organize a quick poll. So
Okay, let's do that. And perhaps as we do this, Philip, and Jeff, um, obviously faculty buy-in, faculty feedback are very important. Every time I talk to an IT person, they tell me, if the faculty is happy, it's like at my house, if the wife is happy, everybody's happy. If the faculty is happy, everybody's happy. What has been the reaction and the feedback you've gotten from faculty, Jeff, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I was gonna when Fawad was talking about recommendations. I think don't wait is key, and then faculty and other stakeholder buy-in is also key. Something that we've noticed, uh, change management from faculty are very they teach their courses, and that's what they want to focus on. And so when we give them new technologies or a new way to do something, sometimes there is a change process that has to happen, and so that does take some time. However, I will tell you, and Phil, I'll lean on you a little bit here, but you're closer to faculty sentiment. But they faculty struggled with the Azure Lab Services environment, Citrix. We would get complaints all the time, and it was they were because they were student facing. They were in the classes with the students, that they were the first point of contact, and so they were forced to then put on their technical hat and try to solve these problems. Machines wouldn't start up, apps wouldn't launch, things like that. I don't hear any of that anymore. Phil, I mean, you can let us know any more that you know about. But I think that's all gone away.
Yeah, no, our faculty love it, right? And it was the adoption, and it was how we approached it too. We we took the solution and we did training, we did show and tell sessions. We got faculty and academics to buy into it by showing them how easy it was to use. And it was during those first few sessions, it spread like wildfire, right? Everyone was talking about how nice this was. And they're thinking about different ways they can utilize our virtual desktop environment now. So, what other things can we do? They want to host webinars, they want to do it for training, right? So, that was a big leg up for us, is to get our faculty to buy in.
Excellent. Thank you, Philip. So it looks like Zoom does not allow to create a poll on the fly. We have to create that beforehand. But perhaps, in the audience, if you could please chime in, tell us what are some of the concerns or considerations you have if you're looking to migrate from ALS to Aporto. Just throw, the things that are on your mind, whether it's cost, whether it's user experience, whether it's the migration effort, whatever comes to mind. Okay, everybody's being shy now. Okay. So, in the hope that people would start responding, Fawad, tell us a little bit about, where do you think this whole area of virtual computer lab, what is your vision? Where do you think this is headed?
I think, first of all, it is important that even if you have physical labs with a diverse, distributed students, that you have a virtual desktop environment. That's key. The second thing is around use of AI with your virtual desktop environment. That is becoming really important. Everybody in the industry is talking about AI. So integration of tools that help students, don't give away the answers or without compromising academic integrity. And as I mentioned, I also teach as an adjunct at University of Washington. One of the biggest issues I have is how the tools are being utilized by students. It is important to integrate AI tools into this technology and make sure that it is available as an environment. Doesn't matter where the student is, and they can access it and use the power of AI at the same time.
Yeah.
With this.
If I can summarize, thank you for what. I think we've seen now for a while that, universities want to provide virtual computer labs at a minimum to reach remote students or students who are working parents, as we've heard, who may not have the time to drive to go to some computer lab, access the applications that they need. What we're seeing increasingly now is that universities are looking at their fleet of computers in the labs and saying, there's a lot of investment here, and I spend a lot of time maintaining those machines only to see students who come with their own device, push the computer that I've provided to them at great cost, and they start using their device. So now we're seeing even people, questioning whether that investment, whether it's, the amount of money to buy those computers, maintain them, or even the human costs associated with it makes sense. And so that's what we're seeing out there. And, we'll have another webinar where we talk about universities. We're going to have another webinar in the next month or so where we're going to talk about universities who are essentially migrating away from physical computer labs. Perhaps what they're doing could be, instead of having a Windows PC in the computer lab, they're turning it into a Chrome-based PC or Linux-based PC, and that reduces the cost very significantly. And they don't have to keep buying and upgrading their GPUs. Because if you're using a virtual computer lab, you can rely on the GPU in the cloud. You don't have a GPU on the computer itself. So that's going to be in another webinar, and we hope that you can join at that time. Perhaps here we can ask any questions that you may have from the audience, Connie and Michael.
Yes, we actually do have a couple. So I'll start off with the first one that came in. What is the level of resourcing that was needed for Citrix or ALS, and how does that compare to Aporto?
And so I assume we're talking like people resources, or are we
Yes,
talking machine?
people
Yeah,
resources.
people's.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I had mentioned a team of folks from a Citrix environment, and that was probably 4 or 5 folks that did infra, and then it took Phillip and probably one other person on my team, so that and then collaborating with our security team to put them in the right groups, et cetera, for the access. So I would say for in our experience, probably 10. Um,
Wow.
and today, I think Phil, you're the man, right? I think you work with the Aporto folks and deans and faculty SMEs just from a not an implementation perspective or maintenance. It's really just getting feedback and making sure we're all aligned. But yeah, so we reduced it down to 1 or 2 folks.
And that work, that I do now is more of a like being a liaison with the Portos team, right? Working with their CSM, identifying areas that for support. So I work, our team works directly with our help desk group. So as we learn more about features that get rolled out, or we learn how to improve the support model, we put out KB articles, knowledge base articles for our students, for our help desk. So that's really what we do at this point. We're not involved in pulling rosters and running scripts on PowerShell to spin up the labs every session. It's more minor administrative stuff that we still have to do, right, to keep the lights on. But the Portal team has been great.
Wow. Those numbers are mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Philip. Connie, do you want to go to the next question?
Yes. From Steve, aside from Aporto, were there any other solutions you looked at? Can you share your thoughts on any of them, if any?
Yeah, well, I mean, we looked at migrating our Citrix to the Citrix cloud-based solution. And the cost for doing that was not even in our ballpark, right? Like it would have cost us, increased in license costs, per usage, just the infrastructure, and then you're back to paying for, all of the VMs that you're spinning up, et cetera, and then obviously storage. So the cost was, I think it was more than double from what we were paying from an on-premises environment. So that wasn't an option for us. I think we looked at another couple virtual application deliveries. I think,
2 other ones I can't find. I was trying to find the name of that.
yeah, Software 2, I think, was one that we had looked at, I think, multiple times. I think the Aporto platform was a much more seamless with less overhead from our side. I think that still required some manual intervention from a provisioning, et cetera. And so that's why we landed on the Aporto platform.
Thank you.
Philip? Okay, go ahead, Connie.
Okay. Have you seen any performance or reliability differences with the Portal compared to Azure Lab Services or Citrix?
Oh, performance, it's night and day difference. Oh, yeah. So overall, the speed of launching applications from getting into the virtual desktop and launching, let's say, Word and Excel, it's very close to real time, right? So there's not a lot of lag. I did notice in Azure Labs, when we would spin up the VM and connect with remote desktop, there was that good minute of kind of delay and waiting. You know, you'd see the desktop, you'd see the start menu, and then you would go to click the start menu and you wait, and then the start menu kind of finally loads up, right? So there's a little bit of like resource pooling. I don't quite know what's happening on the back end, but there's some delays that happen, right, as resources start spinning up. When we went into a Portals virtual desktop, things were pretty instantaneous. So we're talking 35 seconds to get in, and having immediate access to the start menu where you can launch your app, right? Like you click Word and it opens. It's almost like using like your own computer, right? You can full screen it, but in terms of performance, it's night and day difference. Night and day difference.
Well, I think on this note, it's really hard to top this note, Philip. So I think it's a good place to wrap up the session. I want to thank you guys for joining us, Philip, Jeff, Fawad. You guys have been terrific. I want to thank the audience, particularly those guys who are joining us from remote locations at a time zone that is not convenient. Please feel free to reach out to us if you have any follow-up questions after the fact. And we look forward to helping you with your journey, with your virtual computer lab journey. Thanks again to everyone. Goodbye.